Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. On the 21st of November, Russia unleashed a missile so powerful in the Ukrainian city of Dnipro that the first reaction in Kiev was that it had been hit by an intercontinental ballistic missile. But the Americans were quick to deny that an intercontinental ballistic missile had been used, stating that the use of an ICBM would have triggered a nuclear alert in the United States. But soon, videos of the missile attack on Dnipro that went viral showed some unusual explosions of not just a large blast, as would be expected with a missile strike, but of several detonations that went on for several minutes. Vladimir Putin, who later appeared on state television, said that the missile that had been deployed was a hypersonic, nuclear-capable intermediate-range ballistic missile called the Oreshnik, and it had been fired in response to Ukraine firing the American-supplied ATACMS and the British-given Storm Shadow missiles into Russia. Nuclear saber-rattling is nothing new in the Russia-Ukraine war. But the question is this: is Joe Biden, who is now in the final lame duck days of his presidency, aware of the fact that by sanctioning the use of long-range missiles for attacks deep inside the Russian territory, he is actually playing with nothing less than nuclear fire? Our next report gets you the details. This grainy CCTV footage gives you a glimpse of the moment when the latest Russian hypersonic intermediate-range ballistic missile struck several targets, one after another, in quick succession. What was hit was the Yuzhmash complex, a major military-industrial site used for manufacturing missiles. This is the first time that the new intermediate-range ballistic missile had been deployed by Russia, whose development had been classified up until this moment. The Ukrainian military intelligence still insists that what Russia has fired is a new kind of ICBM called the Cedar that traveled at a speed of Mach 11 after it took off from the launch site in Astrakhan in Russia, traversing a distance of 1,000 kilometers before striking its targets in Dnipro after a 15-minute flight. The Americans, who were given a notice of 30 minutes prior to the missile strike, have described the missile as being based on Russia's RS-26 Rubez ICBM model.
I can confirm that Russia did launch an experimental intermediate-range ballistic missile. This IRBM was based on Russia's RS-26 Rubez intercontinental ballistic missile model. In terms of notifications to the United States was pre-notified briefly before the launch through nuclear risk reduction channels.
But the Russian state media claims that the missile was based on a completely new technology and not an upgrade on any of its earlier missiles. For the Ukrainians who've lived through this war for the last 2.5 years, this new escalation created immediate panic.
Of course, every sane person is afraid. You're afraid for yourself, for your relatives. I'm as cautious as I used to be, but without hysterics. We live in such a time when anything could hit you anytime.
According to military experts, the Oreshnik missile, though not an ICBM, has been described as a missile that is on the upper threshold of the intermediate-range ballistic missiles. It has a speed of well over Mach 10. The detachable warhead is nuclear capable, and the multiple explosions that were witnessed over Dnipro indicate that the warhead, in turn, can carry several smaller warheads that can be individually maneuvered and strike several targets simultaneously, making interception very difficult. But why did Russia unleash this missile at this stage of the war? The Russian attack came after Ukraine on the 19th of November used the American-supplied ATACMS and the British Storm Shadow missiles to strike targets inside the Russian territory. And Vladimir Putin did not mince any words on what the future course of action would be for the Russians.
Let me repeat that we are conducting combat tests of the Oreshnik missile system in response to the aggressive actions of NATO countries against Russia. The question of further deployment of medium and shorter range missiles will be decided by us depending on the actions of the United States and its satellites. We will determine the targets for destruction during further tests of our newest missile systems based on the threats to the security of the Russian Federation. We consider ourselves entitled to use our weapons against military facilities of those countries that allow their weapons to be used against our facilities. And in the event of an escalation of aggressive actions, we will respond just as decisively and symmetrically. I recommend that the ruling elites of those countries that are hatching plans to use their military contingents against Russia seriously think about this.
Элитам тех стран.
We got to worry about it. Anyway.
Joe Biden, whose mental acuity has been repeatedly called into question in the last couple of years, is counting out his time at the White House as a lame duck president. The Russia-Ukraine war and the terrible Israeli carnage in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon that Joe Biden has backed with his blank check support will be Biden's enduring legacy. But what is baffling for many military strategists is Joe Biden's drive to dial up the escalation on the battlefield, especially during his days as a lame duck president that appears to be pushing the world closer and closer to a nuclear Armageddon. At least 43 people, including 6 women, were killed and more than 24 others were wounded in the rest of northwestern Pakistan on the 21st of November, when gunmen opened fire on a convoy of Shiite Muslims. The attack, which occurred in the Khurram tribal district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, is one of the deadliest attacks in the region in recent years. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for this heinous attack. Just a couple of days later, after the attack on the Shiite passengers, sectarian clashes broke out in northwestern Pakistan, in which another 32 people were killed and 47 others were wounded. In recent months, more than 150 people have been killed in deadly sectarian clashes between the majority Sunni Muslims and the minority Shiite Muslims in Pakistan. Our next report gets you more details.
It was a sombre Friday in Parachinar, northwest Pakistan, as mourners gathered for funeral prayers for victims of a deadly attack in the region a day before. As despondency gripped the community, shops and markets in the city remained closed. The tragedy took place when a convoy of Shiite Muslims travelling from the city of Parachinar to Peshawar, the capital of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, were ambushed by gunmen. In the indiscriminate firing that ensued, at least 42 people were killed and 29 others were wounded.
We were on our way to Peshawar when they opened fire from 3 sides, and we were in the middle. We left our vehicle and climbed the mountain for safety. From there we saw police and raised our hands toward them for help. Police were firing. After that, we took shelter in the mountain.
The wounded passengers, 10 of whom are believed to be in a critical condition, were taken to a hospital in Parachinar for treatment. Interestingly, the attack happened barely a week after authorities had reopened a key highway in the region that had been closed for weeks following deadly clashes.
Well, following the killing of 42 Shiites in Pakistan's Khurram agency, those who were en route to Parachinar, there have been widespread condemnations to the point that the Iranian president has sent a condemnation, a sorrow cable to the Pakistani president condemning this incident. While no terror group has claimed responsibility, 42 people have lost their lives. The death toll is expected to go up. Those killed include women and children as well, which was by far the worst sectarian targeted attack in Pakistani history of late in the past 10 years that Pakistan or the region has seen.
Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, while condemning the attack, said that those behind the killing of innocent civilians will not be spared. Whereas Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi acknowledged the challenges being faced by the restive province and assured assistance.
So far, 38 people have been martyred in Kurram Agency. They definitely need help. They had requested for 15 platoons of frontier constabulary. So we are in contact and they are part of our country. They are our province and we will provide help and assistance.
The South Asian nation of Pakistan has a turbulent history of sectarian animosity between its Shiite and Sunni communities. Shiite Muslims constitute about 15% of the 240 million population of the Sunni majority country. The need of the hour is for Islamabad to walk the talk and take some concrete measures to put an end to the targeted killings of its minorities.
More than 44,000 Palestinians have been killed and over 100,000 Palestinians have sustained some grievous injuries in this relentless campaign of Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip since the 7th of October last year. Now, such has been the scale of devastation and mayhem that most surviving Palestinians are affected by catastrophic hunger. The situation is particularly dire in northern Gaza, where the Palestinians are facing diminishing conditions for survival. In parts of northern Gaza that is under siege by the Israeli forces, virtually no humanitarian aid has been delivered in at least the last 6 weeks and more. Consequently, there is a likelihood of a full-blown famine taking over northern Gaza. For its part, Tel Aviv claims that it has placed no limits on the amount of aid entering into Gaza Strip. This is what it claims. Israel is also blaming the United Nations agencies for not delivering aid to the Palestinian people. On Thursday, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants against the sitting Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity, for using starvation as a method of warfare. Our next report gets you more details about what is happening at this moment in this war in West Asia.
For 6 weeks now, the Israeli military has laid siege to parts of northern Gaza, claiming to target the regrouping Hamas fighters in the region. The Israeli siege, however, has resulted in virtually no aid being delivered to the besieged North Gaza Governorate in the past 40 days. Experts are of the opinion that unless some immediate action is taken within days, the largely isolated and heavily destroyed northern Gaza faces an imminent risk of famine. Hundreds of people have been killed and between 100,000 and 130,000 others have been displaced to Gaza City. Though the aid groups have relatively more access in central Gaza than in the north. Nearly everyone in Gaza is going hungry these days.
For months we have been sleeping without food, without breakfast. I just managed to prepare one meal for me and my family, only one. Prices have skyrocketed and we cannot afford anything. My family and I go to bed without dinner.
The bakeries are completely closed these days because of the flour crisis and the closures. The price of a bag of flour has soared to 8 million shekels, approximately $220. This means I need $220 every 3 days just to buy one bag of flour.
The United Nations has warned that all its attempts to support the estimated 65,000 to 75,000 people in Beit Hanun, Beit Lahiya and Jabalia this month had been denied or impeded, forcing bakeries and kitchens to shut down. Reportedly, as many as 31 missions were planned by UN agencies to the besieged areas of North Gaza Governorate between 1st and 18th November. 27 of these missions were rejected by Israeli officials and the other 4 were severely impeded. Though Israel claims that it has placed no limits on the amount of aid entering Gaza, The amount of aid entering Gaza plunged to around 1,800 trucks in October, down from over 4,200 in the previous month. Given the current rate of entry for the month of November, the figure would be around 2,400 trucks. To put this into perspective, before the Israel-Hamas war erupted on the 7th of October last year, around 500 trucks entered each day. The man at the center of it all, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has remained defiant, even after an arrest warrant was issued against him on Thursday by the International Criminal Court over his conduct of the Gaza war.
This is an anti-Semitic measure that has one goal: to deter me, to deter us from exercising our natural right to defend ourselves against our enemies who rise up against us to destroy us.
How convincing will this rhetoric be for hundreds of thousands of Palestinians sheltering in squalid tent camp is anyone's guess. But perhaps they themselves will be busy trying to survive and arrange the next meal.
At least 28 suspected gang members were killed and hundreds of munitions seized by the Haitian police and civilian self-defense groups in the Haitian capital of Port-au-Prince on the 19th of November. The pre-dawn attack was reminiscent of the previous bloody vigilante reprisals against the country's gangs. Well-armed Haitian gangs control as much as 85% of the Port-au-Prince territory and have recently targeted the previously peaceful communities in a bid to gain control of even more territory around the capital. This despite a United Nations-backed Kenyan-led international force that's been deployed to help the outgunned Haitian police. Now, thousands of people have been killed and more than 700,000 people, of which more than half are said to be children, have been internally displaced due to the gang violence in Haiti. Our next report gets you the details.
The Caribbean nation of Haiti has been ravaged by heavily armed criminal gangs. United Nations estimates that 85% of Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, now under the control of gangs. Word on the street, though, is that all of Port-au-Prince is veritably controlled by gangs. Killings, rapes, and kidnappings have surged, leading to a violent uprising by civilian vigilante groups. Since last week, an alliance of gangs, namely Viv Ensemble, has escalated attacks in Port-au-Prince. On Monday night, Viv Ensemble's notorious leader, former elite police officer Jimmy Cherissier, alias Barbecue, called for the resignation of the transitional government currently leading the country. Barely hours later, at around 2 a.m. local time, gangs targeted an upscale community, Pétionville in Port-au-Prince. But they were in for a rude shock as the angry residents, fighting side by side with police, took matters into their own hands and clashed with suspected gang members.
The gangs came with a big truck, they came with generators, with large caliber weapons, pickaxes, big hammers. They wanted to set up mobs and spread terror in Pétionville. Our Pétionville is the only place that will remain peaceful in the whole country and stand up to the thugs. We have nowhere else to go, we won't go to other countries. Gangsters are coming from everywhere following remarks inciting violence aimed at Pétionville and its surrounding areas. Any gang that tries to storm Pétionville will lose their skin. We are determined to preserve the security of our city.
Reportedly, police opened fire, killing 10 gang members on the spot, and then chased down those who fled with the help of civilian self-defense groups. Furious at yet another gang attack on their community, the residents of Pétionville burned the decapitated bodies of the alleged gang members in the street. Between June and September this year, the UN has reported at least 149 cases of Bouakale, a vigilante justice movement. A day after, the United Nations appreciated the work being done by the underfunded National Police, which has shed thousands of members in recent years.
Police is struggling to respond. We salute their courage, and also, of course, the MSS, the multinational support mission that is present in Haiti, that is backing up the police. However, these efforts are not sufficient, and again, we reiterate and the SG's call to continue support the multinational support mission to be able to respond really to the critical situation on the ground.
Though the UN Security Council approved a multinational support mission last October, so far it has deployed just a fraction of the promised personnel. An impoverished nation of almost 11 million people, taken hostage by an estimated 7 major gang coalitions, is struggling to break free. The horrific vigilante violence witnessed recently in Haiti is merely an indicator of the anxiety, helplessness, and desperation of Haitians.